Okay, here's that map of the flat Earth, it appears. When reading map, lay it flat on the table. This is new correct map of the flat surface stationary Earth. November 1920. Some guy, John G. whatever, from Boston, and he says there's an outer ice ring. There's 90 degrees south is supposedly the South Pole. And he's got it mapped out like a bullseye. There's 0 degrees is the equator, and then it's got 15, 30, 45, 60, 75, 90 is the north. I don't know what to make of this. He's got Alaska, Russia, Mount Lebanon, and Syria. There's Europe, Greenland, North America. This says North Temperate. He's got the east to west markers. And if you follow it down, there's the equator. South America, he's got way down here. And then he puts the South Temperate. It says, I think that says torrid. Apparently this, once you get past, looks like between, I don't know, about 70, 75 to 90, and then ice. So apparently he's saying beyond 90 is ice. So that's interesting. The South Circle, he calls it. You can read right here. He says the sun's light volutes the earth each day from east to west, and each year journeys from north to south 182 and 3/8 days and returns 182 and 3/8 days. If you add that up, that's 365 days approximately. December 8th, 1920, Library of Congress. So yeah, anyway, here it is. So it's rather interesting. If anybody wants a picture of this, maybe I'll upload it to my collections page on my G Plus account page. Yeah, I find this quite interesting. I don't know what to make of this. Europe. There's Africa, Cape Colony, I don't know what that is, Australia. So, yeah, maybe this is the flat Earth map. It doesn't have the continents, but it's got everything, you know, kind of where it should be. Apparently, Russia is above Asia, just like you'd see, and then there's Alaska, and across from Alaska, around you go, you know, around the circle, the 60-degree latitude is Russia and Alaska. You get down to the 30th parallel, parts of Asia and North America. As we all know, some of the famous 33rd degree parallel that North America lies part of it on, like Bulls Bay on the east coast on the 33rd degree parallel. I mean, how obvious is it? So, there's the map that I stumbled on. I don't know if it's real, but there it is. Thanks for watching. Part 2 I should have made on the map, the stationary flat Earth map that I found in the Library of Congress, and it's by Professor John George Abizaid, I believe. John George Abizaid, Syrian-American professor. He claims it's a true map of the flat stationary Earth. And this was 1920. This is the back of the map, which has kind of a, it's hard to see his face, but and by the way, I tried to find information on him, and I really am having a hard time digging up anything. Hoping some of the viewers might be able to find out any information about him. But in case you haven't seen on the back of the map, and let me show you. This is the map. He claims, Professor John Abizaid. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but here's his map. Somebody viewing this that knows Arabic can verify for us what is being written here. He claims to have published this map to reveal the true posture of the Earth. First, to help the people in recognition of the fact that the Earth is flat and does not move. Second, so that the young people in schools and in higher positions may have the benefit of the truth. He claims there are many proofs that the subject is true, as you will be sure to find in his book, The Enlightenment of the World. Yeah, I thought it said enlightenment, but it's enlightenment of the world. The theory of the round and floating Earth, the spinning ball Earth, is false, and you should not believe in it as long as you yourself can see and feel that the Earth is a plane object and is standing still, and you will see that the sun, moon, and stars are daily in motion. They arrive every day from the east to the west. The sun's light progresses from the south, advancing to the north, and returns in 1 year. On account of the moving of, I lost my place. I can't even read. On account of the moving of the sun from the south to the north and return, we get the 4 seasons, namely spring, summer, autumn, and winter. So apparently it's not due to the tilt, which interestingly that everybody has pointed out, tilt from 90 degrees is 66.6 degree tilt. Yeah, right. I think that's a big clue right there. So he goes on to say the surface of the Earth is divided into 5 zones. The first is the north center. It's the little dark north circle that he puts on the map. It's dark for 6 months and lighted for 6 months. Sometime in the future there will be some explorer who will cross it. That was in 1910 or 20, I think he wrote this. I don't know. That's interesting that he says that, because I don't remember when Admiral Byrd was said to have crossed it, but anyway. Second, the North Temperate Zone is the most desirable to live in. The most industrious and the most powerful nations inhabit this zone. Third, the Torrid Zone, the tropics, is hot daily as the sun is over it always. The sun's body does not move out of this zone to a very great extent. Fourth, the South Temperate Zone has about the same climate as the North Temperate Zone. Fifth, the South Circle is dark and icy like the North Center, but no one can ever cross this circle, as it is the edge of the earth and is dangerous to life. So I'd be curious to see, what people have to say about that. That's a bold statement right there. I mean, that's basically, this guy had this map out in 1910 or 20, whatever it was, 1920, I think. And it's registered with the Library of Congress, and he's saying the South Circle is dark and icy, just like on the azimuthal equidistant map, where you see the Antarctica is basically he's saying the same thing. It's a ring of ice. And we live on a pizza, basically, with the crust of the pizza is the ice ring. And he says it cannot be crossed and is dangerous to life. The South Circle is the largest of the 5 zones. Also, the nights are longer when the sun is moving near the South Circle. But when the sun moves near the North, he should have called it maybe North Circle, the North Center, the night is about 8 hours in the North Temperate Zone. And the North Center is lighted for 6 months, like up in Alaska. This is a proof that the North is not like the South in shape, neither the South like the North. Anyway, so if the Earth was round, as some people imagine, the shape of the North Pole and the South Pole would be exactly the same. Then the North Pole and also the South Pole would have 6 months of darkness and 6 months of light. Also, the sun takes more time to move around from east to west near the South Circle. Take a journey around the South Circle and another around the North Center, and you will find it a much shorter distance around the North Center, or North Circle, which proves that the North and the South are not the same shape as people claim. After you have studied the truth of my work, you will know I am right. If anyone desires more explanation, I will be pleased to give it. He gives his name, address, and city and state, Boston, Massachusetts. This is 1920, so I doubt the guy is still around. Any researchers out there, maybe you can track this guy down, or maybe find out if he had any children, and let's see what their take is on this. And then let me flip this around and show you what he wrote here as a proof. It says, a natural proof by the water. Suppose you put 5 steamers on the ocean, as it is done here, at an equal distance from each other, as far as eye can reach, as far as the eye can see. and from it measure the surface of the water from and to every point, you will find the same measurements. By this you will know that the surface of the water is flat and level, and the water proves that the earth is flat and stationary. I don't know, maybe someone can elaborate on how to do this experiment. Here it is right here. It's right on the Library of Congress website. Bibliographic information. You can download the TIFF and high res. Look at that, 63.4 megabytes. That's huge. Anyway, thank you so much for watching, and if anybody has any information on this professor, let us know. Thanks. It says on the Library of Congress, there's 3,183 general maps, so there's a lot of maps, and you might want to take a look because there are plenty of other maps. 1895, 1840, 1812, 1840. So it looks like everybody and their brother has put out a map. 1826, 1800, 1962, 1893. Gee, that one looks familiar. This is 2004, 2010, 22. Oh, it's getting more oblate. Yeah, 2010. By 2010, now they show the oblate, but it's not pear-shaped. I'm not seeing much of a pear. Library of Congress is providing access to these materials for educational and research purposes. It is not aware of any U.S. copyright protection. It says here, you can use it for fair use, educational purposes, under the fair use clause. You can check this out right there on the Library of Congress. Here's some information. It says he was born in 1868. I didn't see that before. 1868. He was 52 when he made this map. I really was not expecting to see something like this in the Library of Congress. So, my initial thoughts are, well, if it ever comes out that this is true, they can say, well, gosh, we've got, there's over 3,000 maps and, over 3,000 general maps in the Library of Congress. So they're like, we're not hiding anything. It's right there for anybody to see. It's right there in the Library of Congress. But I think they'd have a hard time explaining why they pushed the globe on us for the last 500 years. If that only exists in our imagination. So, they basically created a false reality for us by indoctrinating us at an early age to believe that we're living on a spinning ball. It's just, if that is the case, then I can't even wrap my head around how sick the psychopaths are that are running this place. And it's got to be a spiritual battle thing, you know. It's just, I just can't believe that, you know, people would be able to do this and pull something like this off without the help of supernatural forces. You know, and I'm talking the kind of that are written about in the Bible that you know, Jesus cast out. Yeah, just, I mean, in one person, a legion of demons. It's kind of sad, but when you think about all the deception that's going on in the world, and you think, you know, this could be the truth. If this is true, I mean, why isn't it being taught? You know, why are we being fed the spinning ball, heliocentric, sun worshipping stuff? It's hard to wrap my head around this, but anyway, this lends a lot of credence to the AE map that all the flat earthers are using. Even though Tiger Dan wasn't able to line up all the airports and triangulate them, that doesn't mean it's wrong. And plus, you know, the flights over the south, the Antarctica, boy, how naive is that? I mean, anyway, but this is part 3 of the new correct map of the flat surface stationary Earth. This map was by John George Abizaid of Boston, Massachusetts, and this is right out of the Library of Congress, November 1920. And just in case you're seeing this map for the first time, it's quite an interesting map. And you know, so far I stumbled on this about 3 weeks ago, kind of by accident. I was just, you know, deep into researching, and I think I clicked on a reference in Wikipedia, and it led me on I just kept clicking various references, and I eventually came to this map, and then I made a video, part 1, and a viewer commented, "Hey, it's in the Library of Congress." And then, sure enough, I looked and checked, and here it is, right here. Library of Congress. Here's the back side of it. It's got a picture of Mr. Abizaid, and well, you can watch part 1 and 2, but this video is gonna focus on his ties to the explorer Hubert Wilkins, British explorer. I think he later was known as Sir Hubert Wilkins. And there's speculation that he received I think he was knighted and received the title Sir after his expeditions. And on part 1 and 2 of my videos, in the comments section, a viewer and I have been going back and forth. We've got quite a dialogue going. We both have been sort of piecing together what we think is, if it's true, it's quite a doozy. It's I mean, it could be a total game changer. So we need people to help us research this. And we also need a researcher to find the book that John George Abizaid wrote. It's called The Enlightenment of the World. This is misspelled here, but it's called The Enlightenment of the World. There are 3 editions. The third edition is probably the one we want to see, because it's said it's a 1935 edition, and he is said to have written a bunch of testimonials from people, and there's also, I'll show a quote from Richard Byrd, the explorer, that wrote to Abizaid thanking him for his book and this map. I'll show you that at some point. And but for the purpose of this video, I'd like to explore the Hubert Wilkins connection, because a viewer and I have come across information that, I mean, if this is true, it's unreal. Basically, Hubert Wilkins, we think, was in a race to discover the firmament, and he may have been the first to discover it in 1928. And William Randolph Hearst we believe, funded his 2 missions in 1928 and 1929. Those missions were using an airplane that I think had a range of 1,200 either miles or kilometers, I'm not sure, but I'll show you that coming up. And then there's also evidence of William Randolph Hearst funding Hubert Wilkins to go on polar expeditions in a submarine called the Nautilus, and I think the early 30s, like 1933 or 31 or 3, but I'll show you that as well. And so they had 18 men aboard the Nautilus, and actually, let me just show you real quick here. Here's a picture of, I guess, a drawing of the submarine that they used. So I'll get into that. But basically, yeah, 1931. Okay, I wanted to make sure. So they in 1931 is when they took off in the sub, and that I'm not sure exactly what their objective was. I mean, their real objective. I mean, but it was, we know that it was to explore the poles. And, you know, we have some information written right here. It's typed by Captain Sir Hubert Wilkins, so I guess he did have the title. Darn it. So, it's the Trans-Arctic Submarine Expedition. And then they go into the stated purpose. We're looking, you know, it's publicly they say that they're looking to establish a permanent base for scientists upon the ice somewhere between the North Pole and Point Barrow. This base would be particularly valuable in connection with a plan for meteorological investigation, and which is now being carried out under the direction of the Aero-Arctic Society. So we've got typed purpose of the submarine expedition in 1931. It's got typed up by Wilkins, we believe. And it's got Lincoln Ellsworth. He's also a big player in this. I can't remember. I'm sure someone can turn up research on Lincoln Ellsworth. One of the viewers in the comment thread on part 1 and part 2 has found information. But this is basically, you can pause and read this if you'd like. In short, the expedition is for the purpose of gathering data in connection with a plan for comprehensive meteorological study, including the polar areas, and with the hope that once polar stations are established, it'll be possible to forecast for several years in advance the seasonal conditions and to collect scientific data of academic and economic interest from an area hitherto unapproached by a scientific staff equipped with complete scientific laboratory and facility for comfortably carrying out their investigations, and provide with adequate means of sustenance and means of safe retreat. It's hard to read this. It's so old. Millions of dollars are spent each year by various institutions in oceanographical and geophysical research. A submarine will provide means for similar investigations in an economic and safe manner in areas as yet untouched by scientists. So they're using subs to get, I'm guessing, under the ice to go where regular ships could not go. And the sub was made available by the U.S. Navy through the U.S. Shipping Board for a period of 5 years. And we have somewhere, I'll have to find it, it was said to have been leased for 5 years at $1 a year. And I believe William Randolph Hearst was behind the funding of all of this. And so you can pause this and read it all if you'd like. It looks like they have the gravity machine. At one point, right here, number 12, to conduct wireless telegraphy or experiments on the flattened surface at the pole. The flattened surface of the pole. And what do we have here? Flat, stationary Earth. So this guy is kind of a mystery. We're having trouble finding much information on him. There is a forum, a Flat Earth Society forum, that his great-grandson, Charlie, supposedly popped in and said that his great-grandfather, John George Abizaid, played poker with Robert Peary, the explorer, and sent his map and book, sent copies, I think the first or second edition, to Peary, Robert Peary, Hubert Wilkins, and John and Commander Byrd. At the time, he was a commander and had not. He was later known as Admiral Richard Byrd. So that's what this video will focus on. Peary. This is, I think, going to be part 3B, the new correct map of the flat surface stationary Earth. Library of Congress, 1920. It's a map that really has a big emphasis on this black outer ring called the South Circle with ice. There's speculation there could be the firmament somewhere in here. There's also quite a bit of talk about Abizaid having sent this map to prominent people, and I wanted to show a testimony of his great-grandson on January 3rd, 2009. He is Charlie Abizaid, the great-grandson of John George Abizaid I, author of The Enlightenment of the World. I won't sit here and read the whole thing. You can pause it and read it. The main thing I wanted to point out was he heard interesting things about him, including that he played poker with the explorer Robert Peary. And I think this is misspelled. Peary is Peary. And he says his father had a copy of the book, which was signed and endorsed by Peary. So that is huge. So that was that. There was just one post. It was kind of mysterious. He leaves his email, as does the first person. This is the email. I sent an email to both addresses. Neither one bounced back, so they're both, apparently they're good email addresses, but I never got a response. I just said I was researching the book and was wondering if anybody had any information. If this is real, Charlie is linking the famous explorer Robert Peary, he misspells him, but to his great-grandfather Abizaid, who made this map, this 1920 map. The timeline is right. He also was said to have sent the map out to several prominent people. It says in this book, it's called Plain Truth. This is chapter 8. If you do Control F and a word search on Abizaid, his name comes up 17 times. Basically, Boston at that time was a hotbed of flat earth people. There in Zion, Illinois, under Voliva and Dowie. And in 1933, he claimed to be former president of the Universal Zetetic Society. Abizaid sent copies to prominent people, and he received politely worded notes from Richard Byrd, Hubert Wilkins, and several other prominent people. Here's a quote from Commander Byrd. Note at the time he was commander, he was not Admiral Byrd yet. I received your book, The Enlightenment of the World, and also the map, for which accept my thanks. I am certain these works will be extremely interesting. Abizaid also published a list of 225 names of, quote, those who know and believe that the earth is flat and stationary, and the sun and moon is in motion, unquote. So maybe someone out there that's researching can see if they can find this published list of 225 names. Speculation has it it's likely that Peary and Byrd and Hubert Wilkins and Ellsworth, Lincoln Ellsworth, and even William Randolph Hearst were probably, if not on this list, then they certainly received his book and map. I originally thought maybe I'll just do little short video clips, but this may turn into a longer video segment just to kind of put everything out there that all the connections to Hubert Wilkins and also William Randolph Hearst. This here is an agreement between Hearst Enterprises Incorporated and Captain Sir Hubert Wilkins, September 26, 1930. This is evidence of that Hearst was funding Wilkins at least for the submarine, the Nautilus. So it's basically a contract. I'll leave the link in the description so you can look through it. It says the explorer Hubert Wilkins will personally lead and conduct an expedition into the Arctic regions, plural, by means of a submarine. They're coming back through the Panama Canal, it seems. So that kind of leaves it open to speculation that they were exploring possibly the alleged ice ring. If the quote-unquote poles are not what we think they are, and if Abizaid's map is true, then the South Pole is essentially just one big outer ice ring, and then the North Pole would be the North Circle on the map. So I'm not sure. It'd be interesting to see if that's really just water at the geographic North Pole, or if there's something hidden there, that they aren't telling us about. This is proof of the Hearst connection to Hubert Wilkins. Yeah, basically here's the memo of agreement. It's on the Ohio State under the idea. It's got Hubert Wilkins at Ellsworth's Castle. And here's Lincoln Ellsworth I mentioned. He was allegedly 50 years old at the time of the submarine expedition. And like I said, Lincoln Ellsworth is he's a major player. I believe his dad was mega wealthy. In the summer of 1930, Wilkins and his wife Suzanne took a honeymoon to Switzerland, where they stayed at the luxurious castle owned by wealthy friend and colleague Lincoln Ellsworth. It's during the 6-week vacation that Wilkins and Ellsworth finalized the plans for what would become the Wilkins-Ellsworth Trans-Arctic Expedition. Ellsworth was the chief financier of the expedition, contributing $70,000 plus providing another $20,000 as a loan. Hearst Enterprises paid $61,000 for the exclusive rights to the story of the expedition for publication in the New York American. So you're seeing, the records of the funding, and Wilkins published under the North Pole, the Wilkins-Ellsworth Submarine Expedition. And that was before the expedition actually took place. So, Wilkins donated $22,000 of his own money to the expedition. So anyway, this is all, I'll put the link in the description so you can check out all this stuff here. Here's another Sir Hubert Wilkins to the Antarctic by aeroplane and submarine. He had a 1928 and 1929 airplane expedition that Wilkins was probably the first to the firmament. That says a lot to me that the American U.S. sub, the Skate, was the first sub in the history of the world, allegedly, to surface at the geographic North Pole. And part of their mission, to spread the ashes of Hubert Wilkins at the geographic North Pole. So that's pretty incredible. Actually, let me see if I can find the clip. An Australian adventurer, George Hubert Wilkins. There's his ashes. Wilkins.
Who was this man that had come so far to honor? And why?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know if you can hear this, but they said, who was this man and why would they honor him like that? The crew, Sloan Danenauer as a captain and Hubert Wilkins. So there were actually 20 men on board this tiny little sub. And here's Harry Rothschild, the cook on board the Nautilus. That's a Rothschild. So that's kind of interesting. I just watched the full documentary on YouTube, and there's just a lot of things that just don't add up. They were inside of a submarine that had all kinds of problems, and it just wasn't designed for polar under the ice expeditions. And then they ended up sinking the Nautilus off the coast of Norway on November 30th, 1931, 4 miles from Bergen, and they scuttled it in 1,138 feet of water. And although it didn't achieve its goal of submerging at the North Pole, it did prove that a sub could travel under the Arctic ice. So you really probably should watch the YouTube documentation. It's called The Voyage of the Nautilus, 2002. Did it really go down how history says it went down, or did they actually pour the outer ice ring? Right here. This is what I'd like to know. They were supposed to come back through the Panama Canal. What's to prevent them from exploring the alleged South Circle and the ice? There's just a lot of speculation about the aircraft, the 1928, 1929 airplane expeditions, and that Hearst was pushing for. He offered, I think, a $50,000 reward for anybody that could build an airplane that could fly for much longer distances. The airplane that they used had a range of 1,200 either kilometers or miles. That would be enough range if they were to start out from flying here and I don't know, a few hundred, 400 to 600 miles over ice to get to the firmament, and then enough range to get back. That's kind of what the speculation is at this point. Of course, good luck trying to find any of that that hasn't been buried. I mean, there were quite a few polar expeditions. You start reading about all these expeditions, and a lot of them, they either went missing or they were declared dead. So it makes you wonder, did they know too much? There's so many breadcrumbs that we're trying to follow, and we're trying to connect the dots. Anybody that finds anything, please leave a comment. We'll figure this thing out, hopefully. Here's basically the entire bibliography. If you go here, you can look over everything, the entire page. It's got everything in here. There's Wilkins. And strangely, he did not sound like he had a very thick Australian accent at all. So I'm just wondering, back then, was the Australian accent not as pronounced as it is today? Look, picture of the ice mountainous shore. Looks like it could be the ice ring that, the infamous ice ring that people talk about. There he is on the radio, supposedly. Oh, gotta have a little picture of the globe there. Look at that. And look at it's a half sphere, and there's Antarctica. I mean, what is this doing on the desk inside of the submarine, where they allegedly barely had room to eat or sleep or do anything? I mean, if you look into the expedition, this is a mockery to me. Look at it upside down. I mean, his mission was allegedly not Antarctica. It was the North Pole. This picture, to me, is this leaves a lot of questions in my mind. Lincoln Ellsworth, guy was loaded under the North Pole. The commander of the first airplane that crossed the Arctic, and the second in command of the first airship that crossed the Arctic. Wilkins and Ellsworth submarine expedition for the first crossing of the Arctic by submarine. So here we have the captain of the sub, Danenhauer, and Hubert Wilkins, and Lincoln Ellsworth. There's Mr. Rothschild. Imagine that. What are the odds? Out of, they said, thousands of applications, only a handful of 18 crew members were chosen, and gosh, what are the odds a Rothschild would make the list? Okay, so here's the U.S. submarine, the Skate, servicing on March 17th, 1959. For the first time ever, this is allegedly the geographic North Pole. And look at the ice here. It's not even a foot thick. We're supposed to believe that in late winter of 1959 that the ice at the geographic North Pole is less than a foot thick, and that this thing, wasn't damaged. I mean, come on. They couldn't possibly be at the geographic North Pole. To me, this is really fishy. Let me just show you real quick Wikipedia. the first to make a completely submerged transatlantic crossing, second sub to reach the North Pole, and the first to surface there. And then it was commanded by James F. Calvert. It tells the story here. While the skate was unable to surface in its first voyage to the pole, on the second time, on March 17th, St. Patrick's Day, 1959, she became the first sub to surface at the North Pole, with Calvert describing the historic moment in his book saying, "Slowly we blew the tanks and the skate moved reluctantly upward. It was apparent we were under heavier ice here than any we had experienced before." Really? Heavier ice there? It didn't even look like a foot thick. I mean, come on. While at the pole, they planted an American flag, blah, blah, blah. They also had a ceremony for the late Arctic explorer, Sir Hubert Wilkins, and committed his ashes at the pole. Sir Hubert had conducted an Arctic expedition in the disarmed research submarine they renamed the Nautilus. That's like less than a foot of ice on the sub. We're supposed to believe these subs just ram through the ice and this thing isn't damaged? I don't know. It all goes back to the Hearst funding. You know, it was a newspaper event. They wanted to make, Hearst wanted to sell newspapers, and at the time, this was all the rage, was all these explorers just making a beeline for both the Arctic and the Antarctic, you know, in the late 1800s, early 1900s. It was just all kinds of expeditions. Here's another picture of it surfacing. To me, does not look like. It just would. You'd think the ice would be just 10, 20 feet thick at the North Pole. You know, in late winter. I just find it hard to believe the ice you can see is, I don't know, maybe 10 inches thick. And here's a picture of them scattering the ashes of Wilkins. Wilkins never gave up on the idea of submarine travel in the polar regions. Here he is pictured on board the nuclear sub Skate with Commander James Calvert on October 18, 1958. Wilkins died shortly thereafter on December 1st, 1958, at the age of 70. So what is that, about 6 weeks later? So here's the picture. Does this look like a man who's about to die in 6 weeks? He's on board the Skate with Calvert. I mean, he looks like he's in good health. And he's supposed to be 70 years old here and 6 weeks away from dying? Seems awfully fishy. And then a few months later, they scatter his ashes on March 17th, 1959. I'm not sure if I'm buying this or not. I mean, for all we know, this Wilkins character could have just been an actor, you know, hired to make it seem like, you know, just to sell newspapers for Hearst. because that was all the rage back then, was explorers. An Australian military photographer goes in a rusty World War I sub to the North Pole in 1931. It is one of the greatest stories of adventure never told. You know, the more I look into this, the more I think it could have just all been a charade. Well, after watching the documentary, and seeing the conditions that these men were supposed to have lived on, I wonder if there was some other, that was a decoy and there was some other, something else planned. This is the Citizen Kane movie, 1941, I believe. It's the Rosebud scene where it's depicting William Randolph Hearst. He's holding a snow globe on his deathbed. And for them to be able to produce the snow effect in a snow globe, he whispers Rosebud, drops the snow globe, and it shatters. Here's what's inside the snow globe, a house. At the moment he dies, William Randolph Hearst drops the snow globe and it shatters open. Was Orson Welles depicting Hearst on his deathbed, revealing the firmament? I've brought this map to the attention of all the main Flat Earth channels, and not one of them, that to my knowledge, has done anything with it. This is John George Abizaid, Boston, Massachusetts. There are claims that he gave this map in his book to 3 major explorers. He's got the ice. This map, he doesn't focus on continents, a big focus is on this black ice ring. Here it is, the map in the Library of Congress, and no one's covering it.
Rosebud.
What have you been doing all this time? Playing with a jigsaw puzzle?
If you could have found out what that rosebud meant, I bet that would have explained everything.
No, I don't think so. No. Mr. Kane was a man who got everything he wanted and then lost it. Maybe Rosebud was something he couldn't get or something he lost. Anyway, it wouldn't have explained anything. I don't think any word can explain a man's life. No, I guess Rosebud is just a piece in a jigsaw puzzle. Missing piece. Well,
Throw that junk. Come. I'm not as frightening as all that, am I? Now, what do you say? Let's shake.
Why, Charles.
Charles, you almost hurt me. What's that?
Charlie!
What's that to display with?
You're... I'm sorry, Mr. Thatcher. What that kid needs is a good thrashing.
That's what you think, is it, Jim?
Yes.
That's why he's going to be brought up where you can't get at him.
You know, Charles, you never made a single investment. Always used money to buy things.
You're not Rosebud, are you?
What?
Rosebud?
That's why he's going to be brought up where you can't get at him. Where you can't get at him. Where you can't get at him. Where you can't get at him.
It isn't enough to tell us what a man did. You've got to tell us who he was.
Need that ass right.
Wait a minute. What were Cain's last words? Do you remember, boys?
Yes, where?
What were the last words he said on earth? Maybe he told us all about himself on his deathbed.
Yeah, maybe he didn't. Maybe it was
All we saw on that screen was a big American.
one of the biggest.
But how is he any different from Ford? Or Hearst, for that matter, or John Doe?
Yeah, sure.
I tell you, Thompson, a man's dying words.
What were they? You don't read the papers.
When Charles Foster Kane died, he said just one word.
Rosebud.
Not only
Tough guy. Huh?
Yes, Rosebud.
Eyes calling
just
for
that
Rosebud.
one word. But who is she?
What was that?
Here's a man that could have been president, who was as loved and hated and as talked about as any man in our time. But when he comes to die, he's got something on his mind called Rosebud. Now, what does that mean?
A racehorse he bet on once.
Yeah, that didn't come in.
All right. But what was the race?
Rosebud.
Thompson.
Yes, Mr.
Hold this picture up a week. 2 weeks if you have
What do
to.
you think right after his death? Might have
Find
been
out
a
about
picture.
Rosebud. Get in touch with everybody that ever knew him. Oh, who knew him well. That manager of his, Bernstein. His second wife. She's still living.
Susan Alexander Kane.
Running a nightclub in Atlantic City.
Yeah, that's
See them all. Get in touch with everybody that ever worked for him. Whoever loved him. Whoever hated his guts. I don't mean go through the city directory, of course.
I'll get on it right away, Mr. Ralston.
Good. Rosebud. Dead or alive. It'll probably turn out to be a very simple thing.
I found another south-pole.com, some information on Hubert Wilkins, born on Halloween 1888. There's some occult numerology going on there. He was also the 13th child. Wow. Born in South Australia. His passion was photography and cinematography. And he was a war correspondent, polar explorer, naturalist, geographer, climatologist, aviator, author, balloonist, war hero, reporter, secret agent, submariner, and navigator. This was an extraordinary man. Wilkins learned to fly in 1917, joined the Australian Flying Corps at the rank of lieutenant. His primary duty was to photograph the gruesome fighting in the field. Australian General Monash described Wilkins as, quote, the bravest man I have ever seen, unquote. Wilkins turned to the Arctic, where his friend Ben Ailson, or Eilson, I'm not sure how to pronounce that, but I believe there's an Air Force base named after Ben Ailson. Their Arctic adventures culminated in a great journey in April and May of 1928, when their tiny Lockheed Vega monoplane flew from Point Barrow, Alaska, to the Norwegian island. It took them 20 hours and 20 minutes across a distance of 2,500 miles, most above uncharted territory. They became aerial pioneers, which is pretty amazing, and I think that really attracted the attention of William Randolph Hearst, the first Wilkins-Hearst Antarctic expedition. So now Wilkins was ready to turn his attention to the Antarctic. So he'd earned fame from the northern polar regions. So that propelled him into a position to finally accomplish his original dream of being the first to fly an airplane across the Antarctic continent. Wilkins failed to get funding from Australia, but he did get funding from William Randolph Hearst. Wilkins intended to use the same plane which achieved Arctic fame, renamed the Los Angeles, in honor of Hearst, but his backers insisted on a second plane for safety's sake. A second identical Vega of Northrop's design was built and delivered at cost from the Lockheed Corporation. The second plane was named the San Francisco. The Wilkins-Hearst expedition sailed from New York September 22, 1928. Wilson received a secret message from the British governor authorizing him to make territorial claims to the Falkland Islands dependency, of which Deception Island was a part on behalf of His Majesty's government. Obviously, this did not sit well with Argentina, who believed this region of Antarctica rightfully theirs. The plan would require two planes, with one used to refuel the other for the final push. After sinking the Los Angeles, the San Francisco was the preferred plane for the long flight ahead. They filled the fuel tanks with enough fuel to carry them 1,400 miles at a cruising speed of 125 miles per hour. 8:20 a.m., December 20th, 1928, Wilkins and Eilson took to the air in the San Francisco, signaling the start of a new chapter in the exploration of the last unknown continent from the air. So there you go. We think it's somewhat speculative, but it could be that this is when Wilkins may have discovered the firmament. It's possible. I don't know. Yeah, it's just a theory that they now had the range, 1,400 mile airplane, to go far enough in to discover the firmament. Who knows? Wilkins opened the hatch, dropped territorial proclamation on behalf of the British government. It's mine. And then came the second Wilkins-Hearst Antarctic expedition. They returned to Deception Island late November 1929. This might be when Hearst may have joined them. And look here. the research vessel, the William Scoresby. This is the boat picture taken by the gentleman that took the picture that looks like the firmament in the background. Rosebud.